We'll be back in a minute after a word from our premier brand sponsor, Wheelhouse, the ultimate revenue driving machine.
We began using revenue management dynamic pricing tools, as I said, in March of 2020, because we got to the point in the growth of our company where we either needed to hire a person for rate management or we needed to bring technology on. For me, and the way that I like to manage our rates, it was just a better decision to bring in technology to help with that.
That's Lance Stitcher, owner of Seaside Vacation Rentals. Lance and his wife, Elaine, manage 280 condos and beach homes in Ocean City, Maryland, and Chincoteague Island, Virginia. This innovative duo has leveraged dynamic pricing and technology to 10x their business over the past 2.5 years.
We sat down with Lance to find out how Wheelhouse has played a huge role in this growth. Where exactly have the revenue gains come from?
They came in all seasons. We trusted dynamic pricing, and a home that booked for $4,000 a week all of a sudden was able to book $6,000 a week. And we really had a hard time wrapping our heads around that. But it actually began to become the norm. Some of our properties in the off season, the owners previously had notions of what their home was worth on a minimum night, and maybe that number was $300. And Chincoteague and Ocean City are extraordinarily seasonal markets. The rate management tools are telling us that maybe that rate is 140 during the week and 175 on the weekends. And had a lot of owners that scoffed at that and said, "No, I'm going to hold the line." And I had a handful of owners that said, "Okay, we'll try it your way and see what happens." And we went from doing, in certain buildings, we had condo units that went from virtually nothing or $1,000, $1,500 a month to doing over $8,000 a month.
Revenue management has become a critical element of Seaside's strategy for homeowner acquisition and retention. How does Lance use the information from Wheelhouse to help him win new owners and keep existing ones?
We'll hear about that later in the show. It's all part of Wheelhouse's spotlight on exceptional property managers.
Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we are joined today with Andrew McConnell, who is the founder and CEO of Rented, and also the author of the brand new best-selling book, Get Out of My Head. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm just happy I have a name that starts with A so that I can be invited here
to the A team.
Very true. Very true. A team
right.
is a select. It's a very select few that get to join us.
Yes. I think when we were scheduling your episode, we kept going back and forth because there's other people named Andrew, but I know, big surprise, but I kept forgetting. I'm like, gosh, I thought we had already recorded with him. I'm like, no, that's Andrew McConnell. But now we're super excited to have you here today. And it's almost hard to determine where we want to start because there's so much with Rented and what you've built there in the company. We just got back from the Data and Revenue Management Conference, which of course is very relevant to what you have, but I want to make sure we get some time talking about your book because as I mentioned before we hit record, I took a lot of notes and there's a lot of things I just really connected with. So before we get started, that's just a little prelude to get everybody excited for what's to come. But can you give our audience just a little bit of background on who you are and what your involvement in vacation rentals has been?
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder CEO of Rented and have been in this short-term rental industry for 10 years now. I went back to, in 2012, some family friends were talking about VRBO over lunch. And I didn't know what it was. I said, "What's this VBRO?" And they said, no, VRBO, Vacation Rent by Owner. It's this great site where we rent out our homes and we make all this money. Like, man, that sounds amazing. You just put this picture on the internet and you start making money. But you live in Atlanta and your place is in Florida, and you live in Boston, your place is in Vermont. How do you get guests in? Oh, well, I have a local person that helps get that. And how do you get it clean? Oh, I have a separate local person to do that. And how do they book? Well, I talk to everybody who tries to book. And I kept asking questions. Wait, it doesn't sound as easy as putting something on the internet and making money.
Like, wait.
It sounds like you're doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
And he said, well, yeah, I spend 8 to 10 hours a week doing this. I said, 8 to 10 hours a week. You're a cardiologist. You're a dentist. You're billing $500, $600 an hour.
Yeah.
You don't mow your own lawn. You don't change your own oil. Why in the world are you doing this? You're telling me there are not people who do this for a living? Yeah. Oh yeah, there are. And you think you do a better job than them? Oh, no. It's a full-time job. They're much better. Why are you not working with these people? So, well, because they one, I think they charge too much. And
And
two,
that's funny coming from doctors.
yeah, they don't have any skin in the game because it's on commission. I just don't trust that they really care as much as I do.
Mm,
And I said,
Yeah.
okay, well,
interesting.
but they don't have jobs without homes. So why wouldn't the homeowners all get together and say, managers, if you want my home, you have to bid against each other to tell me exactly what you're going to give me.
Mhm.
And I said, well, yeah, dummy, if there's a way to do that, everybody would be doing that. Everybody, is this a big market? And I started researching, and it was very big, and it was getting bigger. And this new company, Airbnb, was just starting to take off. And so I quit my job 10 months later, or 11 months later, and started a company, Vacation Futures, which was a marketplace that connected homeowners with professional managers. Because I really believe very strongly doctors, lawyers, these people that were not doing this for a living should not be doing it. And it should be these professionals, and the best professionals should get the most homes. And so that was the first marketplace. And it started off and took off very, very quickly. And then it kind of plateaued. Why is this plateauing? Every homeowner says they want this. You know,
Yeah.
if any manager is willing to tell them what they're going to get, they're 5 times more likely to sign up with that manager.
Mhm.
And found it was because there were only a handful of companies that could actually provide guarantees, right? If you're only in Hilton Head, it's very risky to do a guarantee if you have a bad hurricane season, or
Yeah.
if you're in the Gulf
Right.
and there's an oil spill, or if you're anywhere in the world and COVID hits. It's a very risky business to be in. And so we were kind of capped on how many managers could participate in that. So then that led to the next business, which was Rented Capital, which was a product where we would work with local managers to go provide those guaranteed to homeowners.
Mhm.
So we'd say, hey, we're going to work with you. We're going to hire you on a commission and share more of the upside with you, local manager. But as another tool in your belt, in your tool belt, you can go say, hey, homeowner, I manage on a 30% commission, or if you want, I'll pay you $3,500 a month for the next 3 years, and I get the exclusive right to manage this home. And so we ended up getting thousands of properties all over the world doing that. We had properties in Asia and Africa, South America, all over the US. And Cliff, the co-founder of Acasa, ended up joining and helping building that. And he said, with all these properties, we should probably do more on pricing and revenue management. I said, well, no, let the local managers do that. And he said, well, no, look, the people who are the best at guest experience and really care about that,
Right, yeah.
property care, they don't always put a ton of time
Mhm.
into pricing and revenue management. I think there's a big opportunity there if we started doing that. And I thought maybe we'd make 5 or 6% more. And we ended up starting building out the team and the tools. And we started making 30 to 100% more. We were
Wow.
doubling the revenue
Wow.
on the same properties with the same managers.
Yeah.
And so inevitably the managers we worked with said, wait, can you do this for my other homes? And we said, well, yeah, but you need to pay us because we're doing these for ours because we make the money on it. But
Right.
Right.
and then we decided to make that its own business. So in 2020, right as a pandemic setting, we spun rented.com out as its own company. And the software we had built for our team, because we had used all the other pricing tools,
Mhm.
and our team said, hey, this one is good except for these things, and this one's good except for these things. And so we said, okay, well, what if we just go build one that's good for all the things that you need?
Mhm.
And so that's what we built, our automated rate tool. And so Rented really is the pricing engine for professional managers. We manage thousands and thousands of properties on behalf of hundreds and hundreds of property managers with our in-house team. And then we have the technology that they use that we make available to anybody that says, I don't want to hire a revenue manager. I want to do it myself, but I want the best technology. And so that's ART, our automated rate tool, or we have our full service revenue management offering. So that was a very long-winded answer to your
No,
question.
but very concise though
Very
too.
good,
And actually,
exactly.
I was kind of wondering how you were going to put all that together in a semi-quick explanation, because there's just been so much history that you've been through in those 10 years. And reading the book, it was interesting to hear it back in a different lens of like not only what was going on, but then
Yeah.
now you reflecting on it, looking back. It's super interesting. And I remember a lot of the different phases. I remember at Condo World receiving your postcards. You guys did a ton of direct mail back in the day. And
Yeah.
I remember our owner even looking at it and saying, how in the world are they going to do this? How are they going to guarantee this revenue? And I think we had that conversation with you at ResFest or one of the early Vermas that we went to. and heard more about it. And I thought, okay, like that's, that makes sense. But I didn't realize though that, when you were doing revenue management, you were doing that just for obviously the homes that you brought to the company. So, I mean, you took the original plan of futures, was it future stays?
Vacation futures.
Or
Yeah.
vacation
Vacation futures,
futures. The original premise of that to connect the property managers to the homes, but so you were doing it still on an individual basis, that you were having homeowners come to you, ask you which company that they ought to work with, and you would determine how would you determine in the market who would you refer them to?
Yeah, so we did both. One, if a homeowner came to us, we would do our diligence in that market of, okay, from the data that we have, who's performing the best, who has the
For that
highest.
inventory.
A lot were on guest reviews, hence where the revenue performance wasn't always where we might have wanted or expected it. So it was very much from a guest perspective of, are these the best homes? Because we thought for the homeowner, for the guest, that's going to be the best answer. We would underwrite it based on what is the potential rental income. And it was when we said, hey, I think we can capture more of this potential rental income, that we started taking that revenue management on ourselves to capture more of that value.
So would you have to, in that scenario, did you have to like do projections every single year to get that underwriting for the next year? Or is it just a few, like how does that work out?
Yeah, so it depended how long we were signing the contract. So if we did a 12-month contract and it was up for renewal, we would reproject based on all the data we had then. There were times that based on a current projection, we could lock in a 3-year contract. We could lock in a longer term contract. So it just depended on each contract, which ended up being a lot of contract management.
I was going to say that's
a lot. Yeah.
That's more than an algorithm to manage that, I'm sure.
Yeah. It was not a pure software business.
I was going to say. So you found that your true strength in all of that is not only in connecting the dots, but in connecting the dots to revenue, and how you now do that for companies, across the globe, essentially.
Yeah.
What do you see as the future of the industry? So much has changed just even in the last couple of years, but what are your projections for revenue management within vacation rentals?
Yeah, I think a few things there. One, I think we're going to start getting better data across the board. It was interesting to hear all the pricing players out there saying, yeah, I just wish we had better data, and kind of looking over at Expedia, looking at the different OTAs and the OTAs saying, okay, I think maybe this is something we should look into, of how can we create better industry sharing to get more clarity here, because we'll make more money if there's better pricing and more guests are booking and all these things. So I think that's going to be a big trend and what we're able to do. I think also if we go back to this being the 4th data and revenue management conference, and that wasn't really something that was highly talked about. There's a reason we took it on, because it wasn't a discipline a lot of managers had. Right there, you kind of set your price in October and November when you signed your contract for the next year with the homeowner, and it didn't really matter what the trends in the market were, or what demand was, or how supply fluctuated. So we've gotten further on people recognizing the importance of pricing. I think the next wave is really people understanding the importance and the discipline of revenue management, because that is different. It is a much bigger topic and bigger ask and workload than just the price. The price is just a number, but revenue management comes into the strategy, how you're marketing, where you're marketing, when you're marketing, what you make available, when you make available. There's just a lot more that goes into it. And right now, because it's easier to just look at a number, most of revenue management has been focused on price. But I think that's this very tiny window into this much wider discipline that really has a ton of potential ahead of it.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people, and I think coming from, so I started out in hotels, but moved over to vacation rentals and then OTA and then now channel management, but having been kind of full circle in looking at where we were as property managers 10 years ago, we were self-reporting to some of these systems to say, here's what our ADR is. So you were kind of looking at backwards data. You weren't actually able to look at anything true going forward, but decisions were based on just, I called around and this is what the competitors are doing. We were still doing rudimentary shops. And now to be able to have that raw data, like right in front of you, to be able to make decisions is really great. But then you have to layer in from a vacation rental side. It's not as simple as hotels. It's all the fees that we have in play. It's the different types of units that you have within your portfolio. It's length of stay restrictions. I mean, there's so many variables within vacation rentals that it makes the revenue management aspect of the industry so complex that I don't think anybody's quite figured it out. But I think what's great about yourself and all the other tools that are out there is like, now we actually have real-time data. We can look forward, we can look backward, we can look at things that are going on true in the market where we weren't able to do that even, 5-6 years ago to the degree that we can now. So there is a lot of opportunity there. And I think, what you guys are doing at Rented through art and through your team is you're really trying to identify those pockets of opportunity and help people understand where they can take their revenue management aspect of their business if they didn't know they should.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point comparing it to hotels of, if you think back to, say, Africa and phones, and how long is it going to take to go get phone lines set to get everybody on? But Africa just leapfrogged. They just skipped the whole, hey, we need landlines, and went straight to cell phones. And then everybody has a cell phone. So everybody got online and went straight to kind of almost smartphones, right? And so
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So it's the concept is leapfrogging on advancements. And so this is an opportunity where we can leapfrog.
Yeah, I love that.
What the evolutionary path of hotels were. Right. If you look at hotels, they're kind of 4 big brands that dominate: Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, and IHG. The reason for that was hotels and the consolidation existed pre-internet. So to get that concept of a quality standard and all of that, you needed this flag behind it. And I think that was the pitch of, hey, this is the same thing's going to happen in vacation rentals. And I wrote a whole 3-part series back in 2015 of, this is the path that vacation rentals are going to follow. And I think what I missed, and we were all missing, was maybe the internet ended up making vacation rentals leapfrog that. And that because of online reviews, I can get that trust. Because of online photos, I can get that trust and that credibility without needing a big brand behind it. The brand is less relevant than what 150 other guests said about the place in these photos, that are these real or not.
Right.
And so I think the same comes when you talk about revenue management of, do we need back reporting data, or because we're all online, can we see real-time search patterns? Can we see real-time click-through rates and sorting patterns and all that? And getting access to that kind of data just completely transforms what the discipline of revenue management can and should be.
I mean, it's like night and day to compare where we are right now compared to 2015 or anytime before that, I would say. I mean, and I honestly, you have to admit that COVID had a lot to do with that in terms of the new money and investment and just knowledge that was coming into this space to really transform our technology. And it always seemed like back in the day, we were so far behind hotels. I mean, there was nothing that was as up to date with what they were doing. And now, like you said, I mean, that's a perfect way to describe it. We have leapfrogged our deficiencies, that we went so far ahead because there was so much just interest in, bringing technology to this space that for a long time was categorized as mom and pop. And now we are actually further ahead in a lot of ways in our technology than the hotels are. So it's interesting to see how things evolve. I don't know that any of us could have totally predicted where we are right now.
Yeah.
If you did, then kudos and
Terry White may be the one person that probably identified it before anybody else. But are you guys from Rented standpoint, do you guys work with hotels at all, like independent hotels or?
Yeah, more boutique hotels. So if you're treating it more like a vacation rental, so not a big flagged hotel, but boutique hotels and things like that we do.
So you've grown Rented. How many employees do you have?
We're still at 20. I mean, we try to stay very efficient,
lean, but a powerhouse within the industry for sure. And so to kind of transition over to the book a little bit, I know when we had our pre-call, you had told us that you had always had interest in writing a book. And I think your first book you sent to one of your friends, and he said, don't ever write a book again.
he was a little kinder maybe to that. He said, look, you are someone who can do good things. This is not that
And this
good
is
thing.
not
Do not spend more time on this book. This book is not where you need to be spending your time.
So fast forward from those days, which that was what, probably 15 years ago or so?
Yeah, 12. It was probably kind of 2010, 2011 timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not that long ago, but
you got the bug back in your head to get out of your head and write this incredible book about Stoicism and comparing your own life experiences to the Stoics, which is something that I've always been very interested in. And more recently, I'm a big Ryan Holiday fan, and I know you reference him quite a bit in the book, but tell us about what made you decide to write this book.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about COVID once already, but or maybe more than once already. It really was when it first hit, right? And you think about what life was like and kind of the headspace you're in March of 2020. And this conversation with a friend from college who said, man, with where financial markets are, we're going to have a generation of perpetual renters. These people that are stuck financially where they're never going to be able to build the means to own their own property, right? I'm working in an industry where the people I serve are owning multiple properties.
Yeah.
But there's this whole group of people that we're never going to have that opportunity to even have one, their own home. And that phrase, perpetual renters, a generation of perpetual renters, really kind of sat with me and didn't sit well. And then I think because that phrase was around, I looked at what was happening, right? Like the presidential cycle, the looking at case rates, everything. I said, man, it's not just about a generation. It's not some specific age group. It's everybody that I see, and include myself at times. We're living our lives as renters of our mind. And you know, this idea from Stoicism, we were perpetual renters, but of our mind. And if you go to Stoicism and kind of Epictetus and these others, there's only one thing you can actually own. And COVID was showing us our body we can't fully own. Like a virus, bacteria, anything can come get you.
And your body changes too. I mean, it's not always the same.
Right? Yeah. Over time, this body is going to change. Physical possessions, they break, they get old. You could be a billionaire and government gets mad and they start confiscating things from you, right? Your physical possessions, you can't guarantee you own, but your mind is that one thing. And yet we spend all our time focused on exercise or whatever it is on our body,
the exterior things,
or all the exterior things we never actually own at the cost and the detriment of the one thing we do own. And we end up giving it away, just absolutely giving it away, and just renting back the pieces that are left. And I said, well, that's actually the bigger tragedy. And having studied a lot of Stoicism and Taoism and Buddhism, it's like, you know, there's something here that I found personally helpful, right? I have these different exercises and things that I do to try to address when I am able to notice what's going on. Can I share that with others? And in doing it, can I use this as a great platform to go talk to some really interesting people who are also doing some of these things and share their stories? And so that's where the book came from.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. And like I said, I joked, I'm not finished with the book yet, so no spoilers, but you said there's no spoilers. So I think what I found, like in the very beginning, and I talked to you about this initially, was the one thing that leapt out at me was in, I think it was in the very beginning. It was your dad said something to you when you were little. And it was basically like, just don't spend all the time thinking about the things that you should be doing. Just do them or don't do them, but don't
spend
waste your time
on things outside of your control.
Yeah. And I think that, people always talk about, who is it that's living in your head rent free? It's those people, that the monkey on your back, the voices in your head, all those things that are taking you down. And you've laid this out in such a way that it just I kind of like was reading through the chapters and I was like, God, how have I been letting this happen to me for so long? Like I've just been letting myself get in my own way because of all these thoughts. And so I think you did such a good job in using examples and laying it out in a way that people can take all this advice and these learnings in tangible bites and be able to affect change. And I love the little workbooks at the end of each chapter. That was really smart. So how did you come to that kind of that layout of your book that you wanted to share at the end of every chapter, like things that people could take from the book and work on? Is that stuff that you were already doing yourself, or you learned along the way while writing it?
Yeah. So just to rewind a little bit on the recognition and realizing like, man, I'm doing this so far it's been universal, right? There's
Yeah.
nobody that kind of hears these concepts like, oh yeah, no,
Mhm.
that doesn't apply to me. I'm
Yeah,
total
they're lying
Buddha
if they
and
are.
stuff like that, right?
Sure.
And so I think it was understanding the biology of, oh, this is just a human trait. Like this is how our brains work, and
Mhm.
they're kind of working against our needs in terms of mental health and mind ownership because of how we've evolved. And so when it comes to books like this, there are no shortage of books, I don't think, that don't have good ideas and tell good stories and get them all out there. But so much of it, it's you read this book and like, man, that's really interesting. That's great. And then you put it down and you go to the next book.
Right.
And the only, this is actually one of the chapters, action is the only thing, right? Just the feeling you get or the words on the page in the book or the audio, it doesn't matter if you don't do something with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I do put these exercises in. Like I do the zero-based calendaring. I do the reviews because my life doesn't change and get better unless I'm doing something with these lessons. And I wanted to share those with other people as well of, hey, if this does resonate with you and you do want to change it, what does that actually look like? Instead of just a single illustration of this one person did this one thing, what is something that I could actually go and implement in my own life?
Yeah.
And that's where really having tools at your disposal was important to me in developing the book.
We'll be back in a minute after a word from our premier brand sponsor, Wheelhouse, the ultimate revenue driving machine.
If you're not using a revenue management tool by now, you're probably falling behind your competitors. I mean, revenue management is a huge part of our owner acquisition strategy. Once again, it really comes down to the analytics and the data behind all of these decisions and being able to explain why your rate should be higher in the second week of July than the first week of July. We have a lot of competitors that have a summertime rate and a wintertime rate, period.
We're back with Lance Stitcher from Seaside Vacations. Getting homeowners on board with revenue management can be a challenge. Lance tells us how the information from Wheelhouse allows them to attract and retain homeowners.
Very difficult to get owners on board with that. There's no doubt about it. It's a learning curve. It was probably more of a learning curve for us, or as much of a learning curve for us as it was for the owners, because we had to learn how to sell and how to explain and how to educate the owners on the changes. And they may not have agreed with why their rates were what they were, particularly in certain off-peak time periods. We also found huge revenue gains early on with the owners that were early adopters.
We all know what it's like to sign up for a new platform or service and be so excited for all the things that were promised by the amazing salesperson, only to be disappointed when the support team is anything but supportive.
So we wanted to know, how is Wheelhouse's support?
I will be honest in that of all of the software products and technology that we use, that they have the best support.
If you want to learn how Wheelhouse can help you 10x your revenue, head over to usewheelhouse.com. They're offering our listeners 50% off your first 2 months. That's right, 50%. Go to usewheelhouse.com and use promo code AlexAnnie or contact them for a demo and mention this podcast. That's usewheelhouse.com, promo code AlexAnnie. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all bombarded with information these days, and like you said, there's no shortage of books or information that you can find to just increase the power of your understanding of a topic or whatever it is, personal development. But I do think I'm not one typically when I read books. I don't always do like the worksheets and stuff like that. I just, for some reason, I never do them. I probably should, but I really just try and think about more how what has been said is relatable to my current situation or a situation that has recently happened. And there were so many in your book that I related to, but I think just one of the ones I highlighted that was one of my favorites was just the importance of really valuing our time. And you talk about the importance of valuing your time as an entrepreneur. And one of the stories you mentioned was you had this report that you had been asking your team, like, we want to do this, we want to do this. And everybody kept saying, yeah, we'll do it. And nobody did it. And so finally you said, I'm going to do it myself. And you did it over Memorial Day weekend. And you said, but I wasn't happy. I took time away from my family. Did I need to do it that weekend? No, but that kind of taught you, or that made you reflect on, let's figure out the things that only you can do. And that's something that personally I'm trying to really focus on too, because I know I'm definitely somebody that I'm an only child. I'm good working in teams, but I'm also really good just working on my own and knowing that I can get things done. But what that does lead to is trying to do everything yourself. And so really trying to figure out what is best use of time for anything that you're working on. I think that's really where all of us have the ability to grow and be able to get more done, looking at it that way.
And it can change with time, right?
Mm-hmm.
This concept, I don't even think it's in the book, but I go back to a lot, is this 2x2 matrix of what am I not good at and what am I great at?
Yeah.
And kind of the spectrum. And then what do I hate doing and what do I love doing?
Yeah.
And that can change over time. But the more of my day and the more of my life I can spend in the top right, things I'm really good at that I enjoy, the happier I am, right? The more effective I am. And as long as other things are getting done, especially if they're things I'm not good at and they're getting done by people that are better than me at those things, then the better the company is, the better, any of it is.
Yeah.
And so it really trying to use that lens and not as a one-off, because we change, we learn new things, and we can get better.
Yeah. I always think of my father was a policeman growing up in Washington, D.C. And at the time, that anybody wants to brag about it, was when DC was known as the murder capital of the world. So it was really a bad time to be a police officer. And he really honed his skill in crime scene. And so he was doing a lot of work with FBI and CIA, and he would, and really just would take classes like a voracious reader. And people would always say, well, why aren't you going for like the next level? Why don't you want to be a chief of police, or, why aren't you trying to go to that? And he would always say, put it in these terms, and he'd say, there are enough chiefs, but not enough Indians. And I'm really happy just being an Indian. There's things that I like to do at my Indian level that are just the skills that I have and the skills that I like. And I just like to be there. And some people are naturally driven to be higher, but they're not necessarily happier. It's just kind of like, have to find that balance. And what do you like to do? Again, to your point, what do you like to do, and what are you driven to do, and find the balance of it. And he was never miserable in that role. He really liked the fact that he could learn more and do more. And so funny enough, when he retired, he moved back to Florida, where we are now, and they didn't have a crime scene unit at the police force in a town he grew up. So they asked him to start that. So he got to use all of those skills that were deemed, kind of line level, if you will, in the police force, and kind of come in and be like a leader, where he had never thought that was a role that he wanted, but he'd honed all these skills. And so he was still getting to do with what he was passionate about. And I think it's just what you just said about over time, what you do and what you love sort of changes as to how you maybe use that skill and work with that skill. So that's a really good thing for people to understand and recognize.
And I mean, in your father's example, the default is to always want to go to that next level, right? Like that seems to be the thing we want, because it's the next thing.
Which you're supposed to do.
Yeah. But are why?
we? Yeah.
I guess that's my question is, why are we supposed to do it? And very rarely do people ask, what do they actually want? And then the next level question that's, I think, even more important is, why do you want that?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I want that because society says I should want the next thing. Like, okay, but do you also want to be fulfilled? Do you want to, there are other things you might want, and are they your real desires, as opposed to ones kind of incepted by your parents or other people who told you to want certain things?
Societal pressures play such a big role in, I think, people's drive and determination. It maybe gets them off the path that they initially intended or probably should be on.
Yeah. And I think, being fulfilled and getting to that point in your career, in your life, where you're looking at things from that lens of what is going to fulfill me, not what is just going to fill my cup or what is going to get me to that next level, that really changes how you make decisions. And I know this past year, for sure, I've really lean into that. And I think it's helped me quite a bit. But one of the things that you also talk about is detaching from results, which that's another great concept too, and something that's very hard to do. But I mean, I see that a lot in myself and other people, that it's a tough thing to do. I mean, you're working so hard, but you're working for that outcome. But tell us a little bit about that concept, because I think it's a really powerful one that you explained in the book.
Yeah, this is another one that I would say Stoicism doesn't have a monopoly on the wisdom in it, right? Like Stoics in the title, but because Ryan Holiday sells a lot of books, that if you want Stoic,
Right.
It seems like he came up with all this.
Yeah, Taoism has the same concept. Buddhism has the
Okay.
same concept. A lot of their parts of prayer and Judeo-Christian thinking that very similar
Yeah,
concepts
for
of
sure. Yeah.
non-attachment to the results. And there are so many different reasons for it, but back to that fulfilled, one, just because of hedonic adaptation, right? If all we care about is we'll be happy when we get this result,
Hmm.
then winning and getting that result, the reality is you're going to just go back to your normal level once you get it, right? That is
It's
not
never going to be fulfilling when you get there.
right,
Yeah.
because you're just going to
Yeah.
see the next thing, right? It's
Yeah.
the guy that, oh man, I'll have it when I get a Lamborghini, and he gets
Yeah.
Lamborghini and then sees a Bugatti, and like
Yeah.
it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's one reason. And if you can focus on the process instead, that's the
Yeah.
ongoing thing. If you can enjoy what you're doing instead, so say, oh, in 20 years when I get X, I will be
Yeah.
happy. Say, what is the process that I can spend the next 20 years doing to be happy today for all
Yeah.
of those 20 years?
Right.
Because that thing is probably not going to be the thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
There's a whole separate part on what we control and what we don't, right? We do not control the result. The default answer, or the easy kind of case to understand, is in sports, where you have two separate teams
Hmm.
of both can control the training they do, both can control the nutrition they have, how much sleep they get, getting the right equipment, all that, but neither can control the result because they're
Mhm.
playing against each other. And if the only thing they can take away or care about is the result, then one of them, and 50% of the time, they're going to be dissatisfied, and they may take the wrong lessons,
Mhm.
right? They could have done terrible preparation and terrible plan, but the other team, somebody gets the flu and they end up being able to win and say, okay, this is great. Like we're totally set for the next time we play. They took the
Mhm.
wrong lesson from that. And so really making sure, in focusing on the process, you're focusing on what you can control and focusing on what you can influence.
Mhm.
It's just back to that fulfillment, back to that fulfilled life. You're in a
Right.
much better position.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the lines, or one of the concepts you also talk about, is that you talk about Seneca, and he says that you suffer more in your mind than in reality, but it's you need to play out the worst case scenarios. Like you talk about that too. So I guess my question was, I mean, you suffer more in your mind than reality, but you talk about playing out worst case scenarios. How do those two go together? Because I feel like
Yeah.
it's a little bit counterintuitive how you talked about that.
Yeah, so I'll take each in turn, because that
Okay.
is one that certainly seems like, wait, how do both of these work?
Yeah.
So the idea of suffering more in imagination than reality, and suffering more than once, is there's something that's going to happen, or we think might happen in a week or 2 weeks or a year
Yeah.
or 2 years, and we're suffering before this thing ever happens. We're
Yeah.
so angst ridden,
Right.
we're so concerned, we're looking at case rates or what, the
Yeah.
war or whatever it is. And then the thing happens and we suffer through that. And then thing has happened and we look back like, oh, that was so terrible, and thinking and still giving our mind back to this thing from the past. And Seneca's point is, before it and after it, why are you suffering? Like there's
Yeah.
only the
Yeah.
time. That's the only time there should be. If there's going to have to be suffering, it should only be in that moment.
Right.
The dread before and the concern after. So you can kind of get that of why
Mhm.
would I extend and prolong? But how do you tie that to playing out the worst case and preparing? Now,
Mhm.
suffering is different than preparing. Just because you're imagining, hey, what is the worst thing that could happen, doesn't mean you have
Okay.
to
Yeah.
suffer. You say,
Right.
okay, I can't control that, but back to focusing not on the results, but the process. What I can
Yeah.
focus on is, what can I do now to make that less painful, to
Mhm.
make that less likely? what are the things I can put in place? What are the pieces of work I could do ahead of time
Mhm.
to make this, go from a 90% chance of occurring to a 10% chance, to make
Yeah.
it go from a 10 on a 10-point scale of pain to a 2 on a 10-point scale of pain. And so the idea of not suffering isn't to necessarily like be an ostrich and put your head in the sand and pretend it's not going to happen. It's saying, hey, don't just sit there and suffer, do something.
Think about it. Think about
Action,
it. It's more
right? Like,
proactive.
It's kind of like hurricane preparation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're
Yeah.
sitting there saying that, and I think like, so ever since, so we had a hurricane here, 2018, Hurricane Michael, and it was horrible. And I'd been through several before, and nothing had been bad. It had always been like, oh, everybody panic, and so I was sort of complacent. And then this one happened, and it was bad. And so every storm after that, because I was here for it, every storm is like dread now. And even though I know I can prepare for it, it's that, will it be the same mentality? I think it's in your mind. But to your point, it's like, I know that there are things that I can do to mitigate some of the awfulness of it. There's going to be things I can't control, and I won't know until they happen, and you have to just kind of embrace it. But I think that that's like, for me, that's an easy way to break it down, is like, it's coming, you're going to have to deal with it. What are the things that you can do right now to be prepared for the worst that could happen?
I mean, the main thing is it's just taking action, even if it's mentally taking action in your mind, of like taking, assessment of what could potentially happen and what you can do. I mean, maybe sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's just thinking through things, but that at least it puts you on the right path of, you have that fulfillment of knowing that you have a little bit more control. And ultimately, I think that's where all of us, we feel better when we're in control. But when you are just worrying about something, or just, playing out the anxiety in your mind, you have no control at that point. So putting action into how you think about these things is key.
And it's personalized. I mean, far less extreme than a hurricane. I think back when I was a consultant, and you have minimum 2 flights every week, right? Like going to the client, coming back. And you had these consultants that, hey, if I'm not missing at least 5 flights a year, I get to the airport too early. I want the minimum amount of time at the airport, et cetera, et cetera. And, but mine's the exact opposite. Like, does it hurt me to be an hour early and get some work done at the airport?
Right.
Like, for me, that wasn't the answer. My preparation wasn't, hey, I'm going to prepare mentally to say, hey, I'm just going to miss some flights this year because I don't want to be tight. I'd rather prepare to say, I'm always going to be there on time so that I know I'm getting home that day. I'd rather have more of that. But it's not a peanut butter answer, right? It's different for different people. And back to really thinking through the question and the answers for yourself are important.
Yeah, absolutely. So this book and where you're going to go with it in the future, do you talk to your team about these types of learnings and just theories, or, how does this work into your daily life?
Yeah, I think there's some very specific examples in the book of bringing up of, okay, what influences what's going to happen? Well, case rates and what the government does and what travelers are like. Okay, great. What of those things do we control? Well, we don't control any of that. Okay, well, then let's stop spending our conversations on this. Let's stop spending our mind on that. What do we control? Oh, well, how we serve clients. Great. Let's go put our mind there. The calendaring thing, definitely work with the team on that and this idea of zero-based calendaring. And
can you explain that a little bit too?
Yeah, I was confused about that one. But
yeah, so it's so much of our calendars, especially now that we have a book on my Calendly links.
Right.
Yeah. Literally other people own our time. They own our time. And then we like look at the day and say, okay, what time do I still have? Because I've given it all away to these other people. And the idea of zero-based calendaring is saying, okay, wipe all that and say, if I was going to design the ideal day, week, month, what would that look like? How much of my time would I be doing creative work? How much of that time would I be interfacing directly with clients, whether it's in person or on Zoom? How much time would I be researching and learning? How much time would I be with my direct reports and other team members, or, going through and really designing that out? And then saying, okay, is that 100% workday, or is that 120% workday? If it's 120%, what needs to give? How is it? Everything loses 20%, or is it this is a hard and fast? I need definitely this much time with clients. I'm not going to give on that, and so these other pieces have to go. And then proactively, once you have that mapped out, looking ahead at your calendar and saying, okay, did I actually adhere to this or not? And there's things with Calendly that you can have different kinds of links. So if you say, I'm only going to make myself available for 60 minutes a week to non-clients and non-team members that they can book with me, then you can have a Calendly link that is literally just 60 minutes on Thursday from 2 to 3 o'clock Eastern. And anybody asks you for time, you say, yeah, this is the Calendly link. And if there's not time until December,
that's what
there's
happens.
not time until December. Yeah, but that happens.
Yeah.
And then there's a separate link of, hey, for my team, here's open time that is always going to be for them. And so you can use technology for that, or you can just proactively manage your calendar to that. And if it gets out of whack, you go look and say, hey, unfortunately, some stuff came up. I'm going to have to move this back 2 weeks. But it's just like the zero based comes from, instead of looking at what our calendar is and trying to tweak on the edges, it's saying, if I didn't have anything on and I was designing from the ground up, what would I want to be?
Yeah.
Because if you don't design your life, you're going to end up with something that a bunch of other people didn't design. Because they're not thinking about you, they're thinking about them.
Yeah, that's true. That's
we learned. I don't know if you're going to tell the story.
I didn't know how you were.
We were both on the cusp.
Sorry.
So we learned very quickly when we started the podcast that we needed to do that, and so we use Calendly, and actually it works great. But at first we just made it so we had our shared calendars between the two of us, and just let people pick whatever times they wanted to come on for their pre-call and their interview, and it was just all over the place. And so we, towards the beginning of this year, said, okay, we're going to block off which days we want to do recordings and which days we want to do pre-calls. And I think that's allowed us to really get it under control a lot more, because in our regular businesses, we both have tons of meetings too. So it can add up, but taking control of that definitely helps. So I totally recommend that and Calendly to anybody who's listening.
Absolutely.
But,
absolutely. Well, Andrew, so I think one of the things I actually wanted to ask you was kind of like, so moving from the book, like, what does the next phase for Rented look like? Are you going to write another book, but how you implemented all of these great things from your book at Rented and what the outcome was? Or are you guys, what's the future look like for Rented?
Yeah, I would separate out Rented from the book. This was kind of a passion project that grew out of my role there. But for Rented, it has been, from all the businesses, really serving the local property manager. And there was a stat when I first came into the industry in 2012 that really stuck out to me. And it was, at that time, there were 6 billion available hotel bed nights. And there were estimated unused vacation rentals, second home, investment property equivalents of 7.2 billion. We had more than existed with hotels. And so we didn't have to go build all these hotels. We didn't need all this construction, all this new stuff. We needed to use what we had better.
Right.
And just firmly believe that better and more professional management was the answer. That would get more of these homeowners to put their properties in. That would get more guests to want to come and stay and continue to stay in vacation rentals instead of in hotels. And so, the mission at Rented is and has been to serve those local managers in those local communities. And we do that trying to help them make the most money possible through revenue management. But I think we're going to keep working on that mission in any way that we can keep seeing opportunities to do that more and better. We're going to continue to do that.
Awesome. Well, that's a pretty good prognosis for the future right there. I love it.
Exciting.
I love it. So we had sent you some questions that if we had time at the end, we like to ask, and you had given us a couple. So the one that I would like to ask is, what is one memory that you wish you could relive again?
Yeah, there's one, the first night I went away. Every single night when my daughter was born, I would hold her and play Macklemore's Growing Up and like dance with her to this song. And then I had this playlist, and we would do bath time, and then I'd read her a story and do milk, and then sing her like made up lullabies until she fell asleep. And then the first night I was away was going to a friend's wedding that I grew up with. He moved to Dallas, and I was away for just one night. I flew out that afternoon, came back first thing next morning. And when I came home, she had been napping. Her and my wife were both asleep. So I just kind of stayed near the room so I could hear her to let my wife sleep. And I heard her rustling. And I went into the bedroom, and she saw me, and her eyes got so big, and she just grabbed onto my shirt and held on for dear life, and then pushed me away and just looked to make sure I was real. And then pulled me and did that like 5 or 6 times, and just looking and then holding me so close. And yeah, this may or may not be a story I like wrote out and reread every now and then, because it really is like the most powerful moment in my life for me. Yeah.
Wow.
That's so great. And I think whenever you have that, like that human, it's the human connections that just really you hold dear, and your children, and Alex has dogs, and I have dogs, but I have one son, and I can think of some times where it's just like that genuine, like just expression on their face that you don't know how you did it, you don't know how you got it, but it's such a connection, and that you just couldn't ever replace it, and you'll always hold that very dear, and you'll think of that when you're 80 and who's married with her kids.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great. So the question that I wanted to ask was, what is the most important personal attribute that you bring to your job, about you, that you bring to your job?
I think it's curiosity of, if you think about the 10-year journey and the different businesses and business models and product changes, product innovation, this curiosity of, hey, what's happening in the space, right? Like, not, oh, I'm so smart, I knew this, right? In 2015, I wrote this is what's going to happen in the industry. But then I was curious and kept watching, like, no, that's not, we kind of leapfrogged. I was totally wrong on that.
Yeah.
And so I think the open-mindedness that comes with that curiosity, and it, I think in turn attracts really curious, amazing people to the team, because I think they see it and they get excited by it. We just kind of feed off each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you have an incredible team, and we know several of your staff, and it's just been such a pleasure getting to know everybody, and you also, and just seeing Rented grow and evolve through the years. I think that's one thing that's just exciting about the time that we're in vacation rentals. I mean, but to reference Terry White again, he was in the front row of our panel at DARM, and he said to the people on our panel, he said, we are all literally writing the history books of this industry, and I think that's a powerful thing, but it is the truth. And it's fun to have a front row seat to see all of it, and see technology like Rented, really taking the reins.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride so far, and I'm looking forward to another 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Andrew, and just excited, and congratulations on the book. I hope that everybody goes out and gets it. Let's do 2 things. How can they contact you, and how can they get the book?
Yeah, so the book is Get Out of My Head, Creating Modern Clarity with Stoic Wisdom. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible. It's all the things.
Perfect.
You can get, but Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I got to say all the different sites, but you can get it basically anywhere. Okay. Local bookshop can order it. And then connecting with me, LinkedIn's probably the best place. That seems to be where Annie and I are very, very active. In you too, Alex. It's like, that seems to be the place.
Well, we will include that in the show notes. And I know I listened to the book. I did it on audio. I don't know if I already said that or not, but I really love the audio version of it. And I think you said you got it done in like a day, which is incredible.
Was 2. They had 4 blocked, but it took 2.
You did a really good job. And honestly, since this is your first one, I was like, I don't know if it'll be a good audiobook, but it was an excellent audiobook. And I think, especially since I know you, I'm really glad I did it that way, because the stories just connected a lot better. But very cool.
Alex and Annie, it's been amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. We will talk to you soon. If anybody wants to contact Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.
Thanks.
And now a final word from our premier brand sponsor, Wheelhouse, the ultimate revenue driving machine.
If you're overpriced, you will be empty. And if you are underpriced, you will fill up extremely fast. But the market will always tell you what the correct price is. There will always have to be a human factor involved in the process. At least that's the way I feel about it. I don't think AI is going to overtake the industry entirely.
If you want to learn more about how Wheelhouse can help you 10x your revenue, head over to usewheelhouse.com. They're offering our listeners 50% off your first 2 months. That's right, 50%. Go to usewheelhouse.com and use promo code AlexAnnie or contact them for a demo and mention that you heard about them on the Alex and Annie podcast.